My name is Emily. I am currently a full-time homemaker, but I used to work in a hospital until retirement. I met my husband John when I was working at the hospital. John was working for a pharmaceutical company at the time, delivering medicine to the hospital. John was very sociable, and he was popular among the hospital staff. On days when he delivered medicine, the nurses would compete to see who would assist him. One day when there were a few people around, I happened to assist him. Then I found a note in the documents. The note had John's phone number and read, "I would love to have tea with you sometime." If one of the other competing nurses had found it, they would have contacted him right away. However, I didn't know who the note was for, so I was unsure who to deliver it to. I wondered if he was asking me to mediate with someone he was interested in. Since I rarely had the chance to see John and didn't know when I would again, I felt sorry and decided to call the number on the note. "Thank you for everything. My name is Emily. Could you tell me who Mr. John wants to contact? I found a note the other day and wanted to deliver it, so I called you. Thank you for your help as always." "That note was for you, Emily. I've wanted to give it to you for a while, but we rarely meet. I'm glad I saw you today." At that time, I was more passionate about my work than about romance. I wanted to use my knowledge and experience to help patients and give my best effort. "Thank you for your kind thoughts, Mr. John, but right now I want to focus on my job. Seeing your work every day, I felt that way. Would it be okay to start as friends if it's not too much trouble?" Afterward, John made an effort to appeal to me without affecting my work. It was my first time being pursued like this, and I was surprised by John's passion. Gradually, becoming attracted to him, eventually, John and I started dating and decided to get married. We had kept our relationship a secret from our co-workers, so they were surprised when we announced it. "I thought you would stay single for life," they said. And I replied that I had thought so too. It's a fond memory now. Since both of our parents had passed away, we invited relatives and colleagues and had a modest wedding. After our dear son was born, our lives changed drastically and became very busy. As time went by, it was just John and me living a modest life with our pension and savings. John wanted to build a bigger house, but I think the size of our current house is enough. "It will be hard to clean if it's bigger," I said, and we decided on the size of our current house. Once we got married and started living together, John tried to impose the old-fashioned belief that men shouldn't do housework. Nowadays, he helps with shopping and taking out the trash, but it took a long discussion to get to this point. It took a long time just to get him to help with the trash, and I never thought that the peaceful life we finally achieved would be shaken by a trivial matter. I believed that these calm days would last forever. As a parent, I thought my son Mike's marriage would be a milestone in life. Watching him grow up, becoming an adult, getting a job, and marrying. I felt I had done my duty as a parent. Mike's partner, Julia, is a bright woman with strong opinions, a perfect match for him. I was grateful when Julia joined our family. I decided to quietly support and observe their new start without interfering. Mike and his wife Julia, who lived in a nearby apartment, used to visit our house often until Mike's job required him to live away. Julia wanted to learn cooking, and I got so involved in teaching her everything. Before I knew it, we had gone way over the planned time. Maybe it was a nuisance for the young couple. I thought I should apologize the next time they visited. Then one day, Mike came to me with a serious face to talk, and I braced myself for something unexpected. I thought maybe they were upset. It would be sad if they wanted to cut ties and move out. While suppressing my feelings, I tried to keep a calm face and asked, "What's wrong? Are you worried about something?" "No, Julia is pregnant." "Oh, congratulations. I have been expecting bad news," so my heart leaped with joy when I heard the announcement. Under normal circumstances, Julia would have been taken care of at her parents' house until the birth, but it seems she has no relatives. Even so, living alone while pregnant is worrisome, and finding an obstetrician at Mike's new job location would be difficult. Julia wished to give birth at a nearby hospital, so she asked if they could live with us for a while, and I immediately said, "Of course." I was as happy about Julia's pregnancy as I was when Mike got married. What mother wouldn't rejoice at the news of her son having a child? I was certainly filled with joy. I remembered how when I was pregnant with Mike, and I had no relatives and was very grateful for the help of John's relatives. I decided to be as supportive as possible to make Julia's stay comfortable. After living together for a month, I thought Julia was comfortable, even if it's strange to say so myself. I prepared balanced meals and helped her with household chores within her limits as a form of exercise. Yet, amidst our life together, there was one concern. John and Julia were unusually close. They were so intimate that I sometimes wondered if something was going on. I had no concrete evidence, but some moments made me suspicious. As a result, there was tension between Julia and me. Julia seemed annoyed by my presence, trying to follow her doctor's advice and go out for walks, secretly buying and eating sweets. When I found a lot of candy wrappers in Julia's room, I thought it wasn't good for her and decided to talk about it. "Julia, did you buy all this and eat it yourself? Is my cooking not enough for you?" "Yes. It's a bit too little, and the taste is too bland for me. I'm pregnant, so I thought I should eat for two." "Eat for two, huh? That's an old-fashioned idea. Nowadays, rapid weight gain during pregnancy can increase risks during childbirth, you know." Yes, I get it. I understand. I won't do it anymore. Is that okay now?" Since I also lost my parents early, I understand how Julia feels. Being without relatives is lonely, but it also means living without nagging and doing things my way. Probably I am an unwelcome presence to Julia. After that, Julia and I had several clashes. Not all issues could be overlooked. For example, when Julia complained that her doctor advised her she was gaining too much weight, I reduced one side dish from her meals. "What? You're reducing it again? It's already too little." "Yes, I am, but I've added more ingredients to the soup." You might think you're being considerate, but isn't this like mistreatment? I want to let her eat whatever she likes, but I must be strict for the health of mother and child. I knew constant restrictions could be stressful, so I tried to create satisfying meals even in small quantities. The flavor might be lighter, but I made efforts like making rich stock or using soy meat. I realized these efforts were in vain when I came back from shopping one day. Something felt different. As I went to the bedroom and noticed my duvet was missing, searching for it, I found it thrown in the garden. The duvet had absorbed the muddy rainwater from yesterday, looking miserable. As I stood dumbfounded, John and Julia came near, laughing. Even someone as insensitive as me could guess who did it by their behavior, but I had no idea why they would do such a thing. "John, Julia, what's this about? What's going on? Don't you understand? A pension-eating parasite like you should just sleep in the garden, right? What kind of talk is that? There's a limit to joking. I'm telling the truth. It's only because your husband worked hard that you got a pension, right? And yet, here you are, an old woman doing nothing at home, acting all high and mighty. Isn't it funny bullying your son's young wife? You must be having a great time. A terrible old lady like you deserves to be thrown out of the house, right?" As Julia said this, she leaned against John, who also showed a not-so-displeased smile. "So you're enjoying bullying your daughter-in-law? Pathetic. If you can't accept it, leave." Hearing those cold words from the man I had loved, I wondered if he was the husband I knew. Shocked, I realized there was no one in this house on my side. I decided to protect myself. Understood. I packed my essentials and a few clothes into a bag and the rest into a cardboard box. Then I loaded everything into my car's trunk and left the house. I lived in a hotel while searching for a new place. 2 weeks into my hotel stay, John sent a message asking if I had reflected on my actions, but I ignored it. I ignored all calls. The voicemails and messages were one-sided accusations, so I saved them, thinking they might be useful in a future divorce case. It was time for me to start looking for a place to live. I wanted somewhere peaceful, a place where I could relax. While thinking of consulting a real estate agent about a new place, I received a call from my sister-in-law, Rose. Hi, Emily. It's been a while. Are you doing okay? Sorry for the sudden call. Oh, hi, sister-in-law. It's been a long time. I'm fine. It's nice to hear your voice. Listen, I have a favor to ask. Like last time, could I stay with you for a few days? Is it a bother? Usually hard to reach, she said she was on a longer break from her activities. I wanted to meet and talk right away, but considering my current situation, I couldn't give an immediate answer. Of course, I'd love to. Please do, but I've left home, and I'm living in a hotel right now.
Really? Can I get the address of your hotel then? It sounds like a complicated story. Shall we meet and talk about it? As I told Rose the address over the phone and sent the hotel location through the messaging app, she came right over. I apologized for not being able to welcome her properly, but she said she had been nearby on other business. Anyway, after ordering room service and enjoying pleasant conversation, I brought up the main topic. So, Julia wanted to return to her hometown for childbirth, but since she has no relatives, she ended up living in our house and now she's staying there. Julia, that's Mike's wife, right? What happened between you two? I explained everything in order. Initially, I got along well with Julia, but somehow she started to dislike me. As my relationship with Julia worsened, John and Julia got closer. My duvet was thrown in the garden, and after being verbally abused, I left the house. John is such a fool to think he'd join in and drive his wife out of her home. Emily, what are your plans now, given the situation? I'm considering divorcing John. I was thinking of finding a place where I can live alone. Rose, who acts quickly once she decides something, suggested we first go to the house together the next day. Even if I was set on divorce, it would be better to talk it out first. Her words were a relief to me. I wanted to change my situation, but I hesitated to go back to that house alone. I'm sorry for involving you in our marital issues. What are you saying? You're my dear sister-in-law. Don't worry about it. John is getting too cocky. We need to put him in his place. The next day, I decided to return to the house alone for now. I had already informed John that I wanted him to fill out a divorce form. The person who welcomed me when I rang the doorbell was Julia, with a visibly larger belly. Finally decided to divorce, huh? Don't you realize you've been a burden to my father-in-law? Julia threw snide remarks at me, seemingly trying to provoke me. Ignoring her, I went to the living room where John was sitting on the sofa, arms crossed. John, as we discussed before, let's get divorced. I placed the divorce papers I had gotten from the town hall on the table. John tore up the divorce papers as soon as he saw them. Puzzled, I stared at him, and John gave me a meaningful smile. So, you're pretending to want a divorce to get my attention, huh? Cute. Are you jealous of Julia? John's smile disgusted me.
And I backed away. I don't understand. What are you talking about? Sorry, but I have no such feelings as trying to get your attention or jealousy. There's no way I would feel that way about someone I no longer care about. I spoke calmly, without inflection. John began to explain, surprised by my unexpected reaction. He said he got close to Julia because he wanted me to get jealous. If I apologized to John out of jealousy, he planned to live as if nothing had happened. He said there was no need for a divorce and that I was his only wife. But my heart couldn't change just because he said that. If he truly cared about me, he would have shown his love differently, and I wonder why he didn't act sooner. My heart has already drifted away from John. It's too late, even if he's kind to me now. Wait, please, I'm sorry, but my decision hasn't changed. I want a divorce, I said firmly. Lucky you, father-in-law. She's been whining about wanting to leave you all this time, right, Julia? John snapped at Julia. Can you be quiet for now, Emily? Just to confirm, do you want a divorce? John asked. Are you stupid? Emily isn't someone who jokes about such things after all these years together. What have you been seeing in her? Why is my sister here? Rose entered the living room, using the key I had given her. John was stunned, and Julia, who knew of her by name but likely saw her for the first time, looked bewildered. Are you my father-in-law's sister? I'm so sorry, I haven't greeted you yet. Nice to meet you. I'm Julia, Mike's wife, Julia said politely. Oh, how polite of you. Nice to meet you too. So, you're the person who bullied and drove out my dear sister-in-law? Rose's eyes weren't smiling as she held back her anger. Turning to me, she said, Sorry for the strange way of putting it. I shook my head to imply that it was completely fine. In reality, I had worked as a doctor in this town until my retirement. When Rose was seriously ill, I was the surgeon who operated on her. I was just fulfilling my duty as a doctor, but Rose seemed grateful. Since I told her I would be happy if we could get along, we had a good relationship for a long time. Even after I met John and became his wife, our relationship as sisters-in-law remained unchanged. We laughed at how strange fate can be. Contrary to what Julia said, I'm not a greedy person. I worked hard and saved, and now I have $100,000 in my bank account. Julia doesn't know. But this $100,000 is in a different account from the one I usually use. Since John lied about our household running on his income, Julia believed him. Oh, is that true? Then the money for this house is Emily's. She has been shouldering all of it. But if they get divorced, John will have to pay for everything, sister. I'm telling you, I'm not getting divorced, John said. Still the same fool, John. Still saying that. You brought this on yourself. If you had empathized with Emily's feelings, this wouldn't have happened, Rose said as she casually pulled out the divorce papers she had obtained from the city hall and placed them on the table. It was a good thing she brought several copies, in case of any mistakes. I'm serious. No matter how long it takes, I will divorce you. I no longer want to be part of your family. Please understand that, I said, leaving the two of them in shock. I left the room with Rose. I was prepared for mediation or court, but a few days later, things started to move unexpectedly. Surprisingly, the divorce from John was finalized smoother than I thought. The main reason was probably Rose's scolding. Also, the fact that I didn't demand damages but instead secured a pledge that we would never interact again might have been effective. Whether it was because I stopped doing household chores or they realized the financial situation, Julia seemed to be trying to keep me from leaving. I got messages through John, but I found them bothersome and blocked them. They probably needed a maid who would also pay them, but I was no longer a part of that household. Rose, concerned about my hotel stay, introduced me to a real estate agent she knew well. The properties they showed were appealing, and it seemed like I would make a satisfying choice from those. I chose a comfortable place and signed the contract. Finally, I found a place where my heart could settle. Since I had few belongings, I managed the move by myself. While arranging my new residence, my main concern was about Mike. Although my marriage with John was over, my blood-related son was still family. I had kept the truth hidden, not wanting to disturb Mike's work, but I thought he wouldn't understand without knowing the full story, especially about the divorce. It was distressing, but I decided to call and explain the situation. Hello, Mike. Sorry to call during work. Do you have a moment? I asked. It's been a while, Mom. No, I just finished. What's up? Mike responded kindly. Despite the sudden call, Mike responded kindly. His kindness gave me strength, and I confessed everything. I explained Julia and John's behavior since the joint living arrangement started and why I had to leave the house. There was anger in Mike's usually calm voice. I'm sorry, maybe I should have kept silent about it, I said. No, I'm glad you told me. What Julia said was completely different, so it's good to know the truth, Mike said. Mike had been told by Julia that she was being bullied and was struggling a lot. He wanted to believe Julia's words, but with no evidence and unable to doubt his mother, he was conflicted. So, do you have any proof that Mom bullied or harassed you, like recordings or photos? What? Just my word isn't enough? Can't you protect your beloved wife? Mike asked harshly. Julia was sniffling and saying something, but Mike responded calmly, If you're being treated badly by my mom, you can come to my place. It's a bit small and far, so it might be inconvenient, but you'll be away from Mom. Okay, thank you, but I'll try to endure a little longer, I said. Even over the phone, Mike felt there was a lack of credibility in Julia's story. A few days later, when Mike visited my new home, he seemed mentally exhausted. What's wrong? Are you okay? Did she say something? I asked. I'm not sure how to explain. Essentially, despite my logical arguments and reprimands, Julia reacted with anger. Far from being reflective, Julia blamed me. It's not my fault you left me alone. John loves and protects me, Mike said, shocked. I was so shocked. I was at a loss for words. Anyone would be. I still can't believe it's real. It feels like a bad dream. Realizing that my ex-husband and daughter-in-law had nurtured love, I remembered how unusually close the two of them had been. My unease hadn't been just a misconception. Even I was so dumbfounded that I couldn't find the words. Mike must be even more shocked. Anyway, I can't continue as a couple with Julia. I'm thinking about divorcing her. And I also want to reconsider how I interact with Dad as a family, Mike said. That's understandable. I respect your decision, Meek. I'll help with anything, so feel free to talk to me anytime, I replied. Thanks, Mom. I'll take care of it, Mike said. Julia thought Mike would apologize and they could restart as a couple. However, she was taken aback when Mike brought the divorce papers and reacted irrationally with complaints and accusations. Ultimately, they decided to discuss it through a lawyer. The evidence was ample, as I had kept a detailed diary of their behavior while Mike was away. Thanks to a capable lawyer, the divorce was finalized, with Julia being found responsible. After the divorcee, the self-centered Julia tried to marry John, but he refused, concerned about public opinion, which infuriated her. Julia left the house once but couldn't stand living frugally alone, having gotten used to a lavish lifestyle. Consequently, they awkwardly continued living together in the large house. Meanwhile, Mike and I started moving forward in our lives. Mike gained custody of his child, Noel, and began living as a father and son in a small apartment. While Mike worked from home, there were times he couldn't take care of Noel. During those times, I would go over to look after the very cute and tiny Noel. Despite various feelings towards Julia, I reminded myself that the child is innocent. I've also grown accustomed to life in my new home. During the first week of having time for myself, I thought free time is the best and enjoyed it immensely. But gradually, I felt restless doing nothing and started cleaning places I'd been putting off. This kick-started my energy, and before I knew it, my house was sparkling clean. Eventually, I ran out of places to clean, and once again, I had too much free time on my hands. I began to feel it was a waste just doing housework. With some savings, I thought about starting something new, but wasn't sure what to do. Considering it a chance for a fresh start, I thought about using my experience. When I discussed it with Mike, he said, "Mom, you can do many things, but why not start something different? You have many hobbies. How about posting videos? Some people watch or listen to household videos while doing something else. Even if there's no need, it's good if you enjoy it, right?" I thought video posting was only for the young, but research showed people of all ages use it to express themselves. Seeing others make videos like a diary, I felt I could do it too. Still, starting without knowing anything was a bit scary, so I decided to get advice from Rose, who has a video channel. "Thank you always. You've helped me so much," I said. "Don't be silly. Even if we're not legally sisters anymore, Emily, you're my dear sister." "Of course." "I support your new start," Rose replied. "Thank you. Let's go out whenever we have time without hesitation." "And I support your video efforts too," I said. Following Rose's advice, I gathered equipment and posted a trial video, which received more response than expected. The comment section had many questions. Just answering them seemed enough to make several more videos. I was touched by the kindness of experienced video creators who were so helpful to someone with no connections. Now I post once a month, gradually increasing the number without overdoing it. The steady increase in subscribers motivates me to create better videos. Starting something new might seem impossible or difficult, but I believe my eagerness to learn has saved lives during my time as a doctor. I plan to keep challenging myself in various fields, maintaining a mindset of daily learning.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me and began to speak. "There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only." "Absolutely right." His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. "I'm leaving." After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.